Welcome to this GibbsCAM video. Today we're going to show you how to do wrapping or polar and cylindrical. I have customers that call me that don't understand how to use the unwrap and wrap, and in the work group how to set the work group info, whether you're wrapped or not there. Let me just undo this. And so if you look at here, you can see I have a part that has a groove in here. It just goes partially around the body. And then over here I have a helical that spirals around the part. So what we want to do is we want to cut, of course, both of these and get our polar and cylindrical working to cut both of these cavities out. So the first thing to keep in mind is this solid model already has the grooves and the spiral already wrapped. Okay, keep that in mind. So let's go to the this is a lathe part here, but it's the same thing if you were doing it on a mill. So first thing you want to do is create work groups, and I'm going to separate this into 3 different work groups. So the first one, I'm just going to call this the slot. Make a new work group. This is going to be the helical. And the last one is just going to be engraving. That one didn't take. Let's rename that. Okay, so now we have our 3 work groups. So let's work on the slot here first. So let's go to slot. I'll turn off my tools for a moment. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is unwrap the geometry. So I'm going to click on this button here. It says visible edge selection. Now you can see the edges of your part. Make sure you're on the YZ plane because the tool is going to come from the outside. Okay, on a mill, of course, that would be Z, but this is a lathe part, so this is going to be in the X. So just double click the edge. Now you could do the inside as well if you want. It's up to you what you want to do, but it's easier just to do the outside. So I double clicked it and it went around the part. Right click, go to extract edges. We'll leave that at 0. And there's our first wrapped geometry. Now this is just the geometry off the part. This is not, it hasn't been unwrapped yet. So the next thing you want to do is just select this, go to modify, go down to where it says unwrap. So it's already been wrapped because it came in that way from the solid. So click on unwrap. Make sure you put the radius of the part. So you want this to be on the top. This is a 3-inch part, so this will be 1.5 inches. Click on do it, and you'll see now this geometry is unwrapped. Now if you want to get some dimensions on here, you can dimension this. We'll just dimension this right here. You can see that's 5/8. Now if you want to know what the radius is on the part, notice I'll click on here to get the radius, and I'll click on here, but nothing happens. Nothing shows up. So what that tells me is it's a B-spline. So if you want to see if it's a B-spline, for sure, hold the control key down, press L, and you'll see it labels everything there in Gibbs. You can see this is a B, so that tells me that's a B-spline. Okay. So you don't have to convert this to arcs, but if you want to, here's a way to do it. So I'm going to turn labels back off for a moment. I'm going to select this geometry, go out to modify and down to segment spline. I'm going to say make these arcs, and I'll give you 1,000th accuracy. So we'll click do it. Now if I turn Control L on, you'll see this is a circle now. Like I say, you don't have to do that, but there you go. So that's about a 201.5 wide there. Okay, let me turn off those dimensions and Control L. Okay, so let's create a tool. I already have my tools in here. I'm going to use a 3/8 end mill to do this. But one thing you want to do is there's this button right here that says wrapped work groups, and if you click on it, you'll notice it doesn't do anything. That's because this is not wrapped. We unwrapped it, but it needs to be wrapped in order for Gibbs to cut this slot. So let's go to this slot here, right click, go to WG info, and make sure you click on this button that says wrapped. Now notice when I click on here, it wraps it around the part. Remember, this is just a visual. This is not doing anything. It's just showing you what it looks like when it's wrapped, when it's unwrapped. So You don't have to have this wrapped when you start to put your geometry or your toolpath on there. This is just a visual, okay? So let's create a contour. Remember, this is not turning, contour, milling with that end mill. And the first thing I always do is go to the rotate command or tab and make sure we're on the correct coordinate system. In this case, YZ plane. And we want to do, of course, polar and cylindrical. That's good. Okay. Now our part is 3 inches in diameter. Remember that this blue line here represents the center of the spindle. Whether it's a mill or lathe, doesn't matter. So our stock is 1.5 inch radius, so 3-inch diameter. So these are my clearances here. And this is how deep do I really want to go on there. Well, we want to go 1.25 inches. There we'll give a, actually it's 1.1 inches. You can look at your print to see what it is exactly, or you can extract the geometry. I'm not going to do any entry and exits on here just so you can see it, but if you want to, you can put some in there. Of course, your feeds and speeds. But I want to ramp down. And I want to wrap down 50 thou at a time. Okay, everything else there looks good. Rotates all good, polar and cylindrical. So now you can choose which side you want to start. Whether you want to start there or on the end. That's, of course, totally up to you. I'm just going to start right here. Of course, click on the, this again, click on the inside there. If I can get that to take there. Okay, there we go. And click on do it. And now you'll see it's wrapped around the part there. So let's do a cut part render and see where we're at. One thing to remember with polar and cylindrical, the tool will always be pointing in the center of the part. It's not going to shift off any amount in Y or anything else. This is always going to be to the center, so keep that in mind. You can use the other processes if you need to the Y-axis to move off center, depending on where the end happens to be in relationship to the diameter of the tool you're using. So that looks pretty good. Okay, let's close this. So now let's do the helix. So I'm going to go to my work group that says helix. I'll just use an empty tile there to make our toolpath disappear. And again, YZ plane, helix. I'm going to just double check here to make sure that's not clicked. It's not. So again, double click, extract edges, and there's our helical geometry there. And again, I'm going to select the geometry. Let me turn off my cam. I'm going to select the geometry, go to modify, and again, unwrap. And again, the radius is going to be 1.5 inches because our part's 3 inches diameter. And there I have my unwrap geometry for the spiral. So now I want to, as you can see, again, this isn't doing anything, this button up here. So I want to go to my helix work group, right click, click on wrapped. Now notice if I click on this now, it shows you wrapped and unwrapped. Okay, pretty good. Okay, open up our cam again. I'm going to use the same tool and basically the same, everything here is the same, ramp down, all this stuff. So again, you can decide where you want to start. That's up to you. And we'll click on here, we'll climb mill and click on do it. And now we have our helical spiral in there. So let's play. And of course, when it gets to the bottom in Gibbs, it'll stay at the bottom without ramping in when it does the final pass. And our final pass. Okay, so you can see now we have the partial slot, and our helical. All looks really good. Okay, that was 2 examples of if you bring in a part. Turn off some of this stuff here. Bringing in a part that already has the geometry, or the model already has what it wants to be, like the wrapped polar and cylindrical already in there. So that's why you need to do the opposite. First, you need to unwrap it, go to your work group after you've unwrapped it, then check this box. Don't do this before, otherwise you might get a double helix wrapping around there, so don't do that. Okay, let's go to our last one here, which is engraving. I want to engrave some numbers on the outside of here. Now, of course, you'll see there's, let me turn off edge selection, you'll see there's nothing in the solid model already, so I can't unwrap it. I don't need to unwrap it. So let's just go to our geometry palette. Let's go to our engraving. And I'm going to choose more part. The reason I choose more part is it's just stick figures, and it's made up of G1s, G2s, G3s. Any of these others you choose will all be splines. Of course, Gibbs will engrave it just perfectly, but your code's going to be a lot longer because these are all made up of B splines. Okay, I haven't seen really any others in Windows. All these here that are not B splines. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, we're going to go 1/2 inch back, 1.5 inches on the X, because remember our part's 3 inches in diameter. And center, and usually, well, I have the name wrapping, but usually I put some spacing in there. Otherwise, sometimes the end mill overlaps the other geometry, so usually I'll put a space in there. So if I click on Do It, then you'll see I have my geometry nice and flat, even with the 1.5 inch radius there. So now, instead of unwrapping, this time I want to wrap it, and you don't really need to go here and wrap it here. We're just going to go right to engraving, right click, go to WG Info, make sure you click this button that says wrapped. Now if you click this button up here, you'll see it wrapped around the part. Looks perfect. Okay, open up our cam. This time we're going to use the 1/16 ball end mill. I find ball end mills work a lot better when engraving because it doesn't leave burrs, but if it's really small lettering, you need to use, and you have to use an engraver, then it usually brings up a little burr, but if you can stay with a ball end mill, you'll be a lot better off. Okay, so here we have 1/3 is our clearance, 1.5 inches is our material. I don't want to engrave that deep, so I'm going to we'll put in 1.480 in there. No entry and exits, nothing like that. I don't want to do a ramp down. And make sure, of course, you're on the right plane, polar and cylindrical. Now, easy way to do this is just turn off the solid, just hide the solid. Choose an empty tile over here, okay? And I'm just going to hold the Shift key down, put a window around the engraving, and click on Do It. And you'll see when we render this, and there's our wrapping. So one thing to keep in mind when you're doing engraving on here is you can see it created quite a few processes on here. You really don't need all those. So an easy way to change that is just to turn off rendering. It's just to click this, uncheck this depth first, and then click Redo. You'll see that changes it to every operation for every letter, just down to 1. And again, the rendering is going to be exactly the same. Just play it all the way through again. Okay, we'll try to slow it down when it gets to the engraving. Okay, and there's your engraving. Again, one last time. This time I'm going to click the stop sign and say stop before operation 3. This time we'll fast forward till we get to 3, just so you can see the end. All right, now we'll slow it down. Now the reason it's doing it a couple of times is because I have the desired step here kind of small. So let's just put in, we'll just put in 1 inch there, but Gibbs will actually just do it at 20 thou. So let's just redo that. And again, fast forward. Let's rewind, fast forward. All right, this time it's going to do it just one time. So there you have it. Easy way to cut slots and engraving. And if you needed to have the Y move offset, depending on the size of your end mill, depending on how your solid is in the print, you can always change this to change the process. Change this to either radial contour or radial pocket. This is a pocket, and of course this is just radial, but this will move the Y-axis off. If you have a Y-axis, if you have a lathe that doesn't have Y-axis, then of course you can't use this. But if you have a Y-axis, you can use this, and it will shift the tool off center, so you have the walls exactly how the print shows. But anyway, that's another way of doing it. So thank you for watching. This should hopefully clear up any questions anybody has on how to do polar and cylindrical. And thanks for watching.